All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I have so much to go over with you today, but it is condensed in an abridged version, and I do have lots of imagery to show you. So you have thus far learned how to paint 5 wildflowers. Though it may not be realistic looking, it is your artistic representation of those wildflowers in enamel paint. You have also painted those wildflowers, not only practice, but on some glass surface of your choice. You do have a few remaining pieces of glass left over. So with that, I would like to discuss with you what is the next stage of this particular class. Well, let me go ahead and show you. I'm going to share my screen with you here and share with you some really nice images and talk to you about different presentations. I am sharing. Oh, Kat's coming back. I'm gonna admit her.
Yep, we lost you.
Okay.
Wow, you got a lot of icons on your screen.
It's a working laptop. Okay. All right, make sure Kat's here. And she can send me a message if she would like. If you did not practice, that's okay. Maybe you just don't understand really what you're in store, what's going on, what you're in store for here. But I want to make sure that I provide you with all the information that you need to have beautiful wildflower enamel paintings. All right, friends. The Next Stage program is brought to you by Heal Her Art, a wellness program for women veterans. And we are so thankful for our sponsors, the American Legion Auxiliary Foundation, Veterans First, and the Arizona Commission on the Arts. So I did not receive any questions from you regarding this particular activity, but you're wondering, I'm sure within your own head, okay, so I painted some wildflowers, what's next? So there are several ways that you can apply this knowledge to both enamel paints and also wildflowers. I am going to just real quick make sure everyone is muted here. Okay. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. And we're going to continue with this presentation here. So I would like for you, when I show you these different possibilities, to please look at the actual artwork itself and not necessarily the vessel or what it is applied on. Though you can get some great ideas from that, I really want you to focus on the actual wildflower art itself and then take that and go from there. Focus on the painting styles, the designs, the size of the flowers, the portions of the flowers, and overall composition. All right. So the flower buds and flower heads close up here. There we go. So on the far left, you will see that I have a wine glass that has actually just the flower heads itself. There are really no stems unless you get to the stem of the wine glass on the far left there. On the far right, you can see complete wildflowers, but it's really just one wildflower itself, and it is very minimal and simple, very simple. So it is not all the wildflowers together, and it's very dainty and elegant. So in the example right in the center, it is also dainty and elegant, but it also has the leaves, where the example at the top right is missing the leaves. All right, so an option to choose your favorite one of 3 flowers. You can choose a bunch of them together, whether it's simple or elegant. Picture on the left is one flower type. I'm thinking it's the just basic poppy. And you can notice that there's grass along the bottom. That addition makes a huge difference when working on a larger scale of flowers and stems so that the image is not floating on the screen there. On the right, there's 3 flowers depicting in that artwork, and the addition of grass is there. But notice that it's all condensed to the center of the artwork. That's concentration centrally placed gives the sense of order and clean presentation in wild nature. So spacing elements. Continuing with minimal flowers on the top left, the glass has 3 flowers, simplified, and several bees. On contrast, the image at the bottom center is a combination of flowers presented in the collage format, and so the flower stems and leaves are not presented in any order way or growing from a particular direction or starting at a base per se. So this composition, though it's active, does allow the light to pass through. So you can see that there are some small openings there. On the far right, this is another collage presentation of the wildflowers, but this is clearly full coverage of the surface. In fact, the artist painted the background with various organic color blocks. You can see that. And the flowers on top are not necessarily true to nature colors. They are mostly white and white variation colors. And that is so that they are able to pop. All right, so before moving into wildflower field art, I'm going to continue with this idea of incorporating the background, similar to what I discussed on the last slide there. So you may recall that the artist filled the background with organic color blocks and then painted over top of it. So on the far left here, this is really simple yet eye-catching, this design here. And you can notice that the artist actually started with a blue vase, but then painted blue on top of the vase. So you can paint on glass surfaces that are already colored, but by them painting that blue on the surface there, that allowed them to be able to focus on the design at hand. If they did not paint that blue coat of paint as the base, then you would still be able to see through the glass, and it would be very distracting to the overall design. Okay, in the center here, the artist chose to, at the bottom, put some color in the background. That's a nice contrasting color. And so it is contrasting. So for oranges, you want greens and blues as your contrasting color. And those colors make the other colors more vibrant. So because of that color as the base behind at the bottom, that draws your eyes in. And once you start looking at that design, you have no choice but to continue to look at the rest of the artwork. So that is another way to make your art stand out, and a little different is by adding some color to the background, but not necessarily the whole background. And lastly, on the far right here, this is a background alternative. It is frosting your glass. So frosting is created with an etching solution, and the most common crafting etching solution brands are Armor Etch and Plaid Etching Cream, pictured here. So the way it works is you paint the solution on the surface, you leave it for a few minutes, and then you wash it off. Then you're ready to paint your glass surface. I've got a few messages here. I want to just check real quick. Oh, good. Loving things. Great comments. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about wildflower fields, because really, maybe you just love the idea of painting lots of wildflowers in a field in enamel paint and or on glass. So we need to think about the order of the flowers based on the height, because obviously some are taller than others. So you want to paint anything that is tallest first, and you want to get them in place. But the thing that you have to do is not put your second and third coats on your leaves. You want to keep those leaves very lightly coated. So they're very thin, very see-through. And this allows you to build your layers of your flowers on top. So I've given you on this slide here an order of the wildflowers that we have learned about in order of tallest to shortest. And so tallest would be in the back and shortest obviously in the front. Okay, so here are just a few examples of wildflowers with the flowers varying in heights, one in front of the other. These two examples here are not necessarily the wildflowers that we learned, and I chose this specifically because I did not want to hinder your creativity by showing you the wildflowers that we learned in an order. I want you to interpret whatever information you have been given and whatever you have learned and you enjoy about the wildflowers to take that and run. So on both the left and right, you can see that there are wildflowers that are very tall and slender in the back. There are grasses there, and then as they work their way closer to the front of the canvas, I call it any surface that you paint on your canvas, you can see that the flowers get, one, they get more detail, two, they get shorter in height, okay, and three, they get more vibrant. So we've got a couple more people coming in here. So this presentation is recorded, so you will have this on video. I have some questions about that list again for our wildflowers. So I will go back to that in just a moment, but I want to get through the rest of this presentation so that you have all the information and I can get all those questions at the end and be able to answer all of them together. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because it looks like my presentation wanted to end, even though that is not the end. Ah, here we go. I will share again. Okay. All right, so you're thinking, oh my goodness, Dana, this is so awesome. I love all of this, but this is just like a lot for me. And I don't even know if I have enough paint for this because I've already used a lot of my paint doing these examples. What do I do? Okay, so alternative paint options to the enamels is acrylic paint. If you would like to stick with the enamel paints are sold at local craft stores, and you know that they are enamels when they have baking instructions on the back. There are multiple brands of these of enamel paints that you can bake. The average is between $3.25 and $3.50 for 30 minutes. That's a standard across the industry. Enamel paints you bake on. But acrylic paints also work well for this. And I have actually tested it out myself, and I will show you an example. There's a mild difference to working with enamels versus acrylics. You can do acrylics on the glass, but the acrylics I don't recommend for food and beverage. So where the enamels are top rack only, dishwasher safe, I only recommend hand wash. I do not recommend food and beverage for any type of art that is painted with acrylic paints. You can bake the acrylic paints just like the enamel paints, which is pretty amazing. And that makes them way more durable, but not nearly as durable as the enamels. So I would save your enamel paints for any type of glassware that you think you would like to use for food and beverage. So you've got those bottles, maybe you have a glass plate that you would like to put some paint on. Save your enamels for things of that nature. Or if you say, you know what, Dana, I really don't have an interest in any type of enamel paint with food and beverage items, but I just want to paint it on the glass, that's fine. Just know that enamels have to stay with enamels and acrylics have to stay with acrylics, even though they can both be painted on glass and both be baked on. The acrylic paint, I noticed, after it's baked, it does not have the same type of sheen as enamel paints, so it's a little less shiny. Also with enamel paints, you have way more color options. Here is my example I just did this week with my test for glass and acrylic paints. So a couple of these are many coats of paint, and a couple other ones are only 2 coats of paint. So you can see I just used the acrylic paint that I use on canvas, and I baked them in the oven just the same as I would the enamel paints, making sure I let them preheat properly in the oven and then also cool down just overnight as long as it needed. Okay, so the baking instructions, I'll stop sharing here because that is the last of my presentation. So baking is at 350 for 30 minutes approximately. What I do is at nighttime, I will just put on a sheet my items. I put them all together. So depending on how many I have, whether I have one, I try to have multiple at a time so that I make it worthwhile for heating up the oven. And I'll put them in, I'll let it preheat naturally, and then it cooks for 30 minutes and it cools down when I go to bed. So I'll do it while I'm taking my face off, brushing my teeth, doing everything I do for the end of the night, and then it's done cooking, turn it off, and I go to bed and I got a nice surprise in the morning. That is the way that I always have done it. I have found if I paint my artwork and don't let it dry for at least 24 hours prior to painting, I have had situations where the glass cracks. Nothing has ever blown up, but the glass will crack. For instance, I had 2 bottles in there and I was painting all kinds of thick layers of enamel paint and I was in a hurry, I had an event and I wanted to bake it so it was durable, but it ended up that while I started preheating, I could hear ting, and so then I had a hairline crack on both of them. Now I still used them, I just glued it together and no one was the wiser, but I know I can't use those bottles for any type of food or beverage application. Okay, so friends, with all that being said, I'm going to review the chat here and see what we got for questions and answer all the questions that you have. Okay, so if you have not practiced, that's okay. You have the video tutorial that I created for you where you can paint along with me. It's very professional. I took a long time to edit it, so it does not have the all the nonsense that you say when you are tongue-tied. And it is really nice and focused right over my shoulder so you can see me painting as I'm telling you what I'm doing. You will get a link to that video, the last Zoom session, you'll get a link to that, and also this Zoom session, which is recorded, you can get a link to watch that at a later time. So I have a question here, can I paint on mason jars with texture? Yes, so if it's glass and it has texture, the texture does not affect the paint at all. That texture will still remain there, but I would think that the texture will be limiting as to fine detail if you're painting with your brush over it, but there is no chemical issue, no problem at all painting on glass that has texture. Let's see. Oh, okay, so the list again for the wildflowers, let me go back to my PowerPoint here and I will find that page. Though it is in the recording, I will pull it right up here And I will post it one more time. Okay, well, I tried. There we go. All right, so what I did is I did a Google search on the wildflowers that we focused on and looked up the average height of those flowers. And so here is the order. Compass plant can get pretty tall. 3 to 10 feet is pretty substantial, but remember, that is in the sunflower family, so that makes sense. Blazing star is the next tallest flower at 3 to 4 feet. And so I would say if I were doing a painting on a piece of glass, I would make the compass obviously the tallest, but then I would have the blazing be the next tallest. And blazing can even be close in height to the compass in some situations because they both have the base of 3 feet. So the cardinal plant, which is the flowers that have the red little flowers on them, they're very tall and narrow. That's 24 inches, so about 2 feet for that one. And the California poppy, you can always turn that into a regular poppy, 13 to 18 inches, and the bloodroot being the closest to the ground level, which is nice because you can just, for decorative purposes, make them just very dainty little white flowers in the front, and they will just look so sharp. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, the name of the brand of the enamel paint I use. Let me just. So don't get focused on the enamel paints per se, because they are a little bit more costly, and you can still have some really beautiful artwork with the acrylic paints, okay? So the enamel paint that I use is Deco Art, and I will type it here in the message so you can actually see the spelling. Deco Art Gloss Enamel. Okay, and I choose this one because I get a really good deal at Michael's. I purchase large quantities there and they give me a substantial discount. But there are other brands that are bake on enamel that you can use. You just have to look on the back that says it has baking instructions. So, you know, this one says 325 and I still do it at 350. So I just stick with 350. That's my standard, even for the acrylics across the board. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Thank you, Carolyn. The baking instructions are on the papers that came with the kit. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So those glasses that I got, if you wanted to paint on inexpensive glass, I got the plate glass from Goodwill Salvation Army. I think one of them has like Friday or Saturday 50% off everything. And so I go and I'll buy, I don't care if it's the ugliest picture ever, as long as the glass isn't cracked, I can use that plate glass to make my own artwork. Also their stemware or their vases, pictures, anything that's glass, I can paint on that. I also go to the dollar store when I can't find what I'm looking for at the secondhand stores. And at the dollar store, there were some glasses that are actually slightly tinted, or maybe you may have some glasses that are tinted. Back in like, I don't know, the 80s or something, that black tinted glass was really popular for glasses. I've painted on those. Actually, one of those glasses I used for the pumpkins, and you couldn't tell a difference at all, except for, let's see here. I think there might have been, I'm going to share this screen with you here one more time. And let's see, share screen. Okay, so with this particular painting that I just did this past week, and I baked it on, one of these glasses, oh yes, this one in the back here, straight in the back, there's two on each side. That glass actually is a black glass. And so I did not paint anything on the top portion of it. So when you're looking at it, you can see that the glass is a little bit darker. but that's it. So it doesn't affect anything. I think also the glass on the far right with my logo there, the blue one, that one was like a green blue color, or maybe the one in the front, but it didn't affect anything because I don't care what it looks like because the paint you can see through to the other side where those little tea lights are. So, all right, let me see if I have any other questions here, and then that will be what we have for today. I will talk to you real quick about what to expect for next week. All right, so no more questions. I'm still available for questions. Go ahead and type them in if you have them. All right, so next week. So based on all of this information that you have just received, and also the skills that you have learned over the past week and a half or so, I would like for you to at least do another wildflower creation. And if it ends up being very dainty and just one flower, you're like, Dana, I really don't like all those flowers. I don't like this one flower. Or you don't like any of the flowers and you don't want to paint that at all. I would like for you to do something and share that with me. I will put in a request for some photos for that. Also, we'll be discussing next week about exhibiting artwork into the Veterans Creative Art Festival and any questions that may be related to that. If you are interested, seriously interested in submitting your work of art, and let's say it's on plate glass and you have no clue how to display it, we're going to be going over some of those options also. We'll also be going over, maybe you have a work of art that you did on plate glass and you've got the tall flowers, the medium flowers, and then the short flowers, but just something doesn't seem right, something seems off, and you would like some suggestions or guidance. I'll be able to offer that at the next session. And lastly, I'm giving each and every one of you an opportunity next week to present, if you'd like, anything that you have created with the enamel paints, with any of the materials in the kits, even if they are not wildflowers. So a question here, will I send all the images of the new paintings? I will compile a collage of the works of art that you all send me, and I will put that in a presentation video for you that you can view and will only be available to our class. All of the works of art that you have seen in this presentation is recorded, and you'll be able to view that at your leisure. All right, well, friends, I think that's all I've got for this evening. It's a short one, but it gives you some time to be creative if you put a block of time aside for this. I hope I've inspired you to make some fantastic art here. And please remember, acrylics and enamels do not mix. So if you assess the amount of enamels that you have, decide to do a work of art based on the amount of enamels you have. Depending on the acrylic you have, you may have more acrylic than you have enamels or vice versa. I would make your larger piece with whichever you have a greater quantity of. Okay, well, that's it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much, friends. Please send some examples of your artwork. I am going to stop this video here. We have it for your viewing pleasure later.